Hi everyone. Okay, happy weekend. All right. We'll talk about the party is over. I guess our party isn't over. Our party just started. I saw people were talking about snack, the right snack for Lay's live stream. And someone was having what? Ice cream cone? Sunday ice cream sundae cone? Sounds very delicious. I would love to have one, but I can't. Anyways, okay, let's talk about Sino-US relations. This Thursday, I told you I was going to talk about the weaknesses of the Chinese PLA, but Anthony Blinken's visit to China is very important, and I think it deserves a live stream discussion. And let me first talk about the importance of his visit. Well, Sino-US relations is the focal point of today's geopolitics. And the United States is facing many challenges: the Ukraine Russia war, the conflict in the Middle East, the tension in South China Sea, the tension in the Taiwan Strait, the fentanyl crisis, the border crisis, concerns about the American economy. Now, a key driver behind these issues or crises is China and its communist government. Of all the contentions between China and the US, China's support to Russia um, in the war is the most pressing issue. The West cannot afford to have Ukraine lose the war, and it wants to end the war in Ukraine. And the reason it's not ending the war is China's support to Russia. So that's why Anthony Blinken needed to go to China and give the CCP an ultimatum. That's why his visit is important. There's another reason why the trip was important. Well, it's because Joe Biden is the only U.S. president since George H.W. Bush who didn't visit China. Now he is what I don't think. I mean, he hasn't visited China, and he has what, a few months left since the election in November. So I don't think he will visit China in the next couple of months. So after George Bush Sr., Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, Trump all visited China. Actually, since Richard Nixon's historic visit in 1971, 72, there are only two U.S. presidents who didn't pay China a visit. That's Ronald Reagan and now Joe Biden. Jimmy Carter made several visits to China post his presidency. So that makes Anthony Blinken the highest ranking U.S. official in the Biden administration who visits China. So that's why his visit is important. However, based on what we've observed from his visit, a few signs indicate that the U.S.-China relations will quickly deteriorate from here on. The United States has been vocal about its intention and what will come up. Blinken himself expressed that in his press conference in Beijing. What I will talk about tonight are the subtle signs that the Chinese have given that I don't think many Western media has either picked up or talked about. So I'll start with the contentions between the two countries before Blinken's visit. Then I'll talk about how Blinken was received in China, and then CCP's dirty little trick that explains why Blinken and Yellen couldn't fly to Beijing directly. I want to talk about how Blinken-Wang's meeting accidentally became public interest in China. And I want to talk about Xi Jinping's meeting with Blinken. I will compare it to the 2023 meeting. Last but not least, which I think is the most important part of tonight's talk, is how Russia react to all of this. And so in a sense, I'll talk about US-China-Russia relations. Okay, so let's first talk about tensions that had been building up before Blinken's visit. Now, on April 11th, the United States, Japan, and the Philippines held their first trilateral summit during which Joe Biden stated that the U.S. defense commitments to Japan and the Philippines are rock solid. On April 22nd, the US and the Philippines started their largest ever joint military exercises, which will last until May the 10th. Anthony Blinken stated at G7 meeting that Beijing cannot have it both ways, wanting to establish friendly relations with Europe while fostering a threat to Europe by aiding Russia in the war. He indicated that China needs to choose between Russia and the West. Also, following the passage of a bill in the U.S. House that includes provisions for funding Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, as well as banning TikTok, the U.S. Senate passed it expediently on April the 23rd, and Joe Biden signed it into law on April 24th, which was the same day that Blinken landed in China. So the above actions by the U.S. certainly made Beijing upset. So let's talk about what Beijing has done on their side. On the eve of Blinken's visit to China, the Chinese Navy released a short propaganda video featuring the JL-2 missile, which is a submarine-launched intercontinental ballistic missile with a range of up to 10,000 kilometers. Which means that this missile can reach U.S. mainland. In response to Japan-U.S. Philippines trilateral summit that the U.S. Organized, on April 15th, He Weidong, the vice chairman of CCP's Central Military Commission, received the visiting director of the political department of the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Cuba in Beijing. He expressed CCP's continued commitment to support the Cuban military. For two consecutive days starting April 20th, multiple PLA jets crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait, with the closest approaching only about 41 nautical miles from Keelung, Taiwan. Now, earlier than that, China unilaterally announced the change the north to south aviation route along the median line of the strait. It means that China's aircraft can fly close to the median line of the strait, and it can potentially affect aviation safety around the Kinmen and Matsu Island. So the above events preceded Blinken's visit. Now let's talk about his visit. I have pictures. Here we go. When Blinken made his first visit to China last June, he was greeted at the airport by the head of the North American Affairs Division in the Foreign Ministry. He's an official who was in charge of American affairs. This time, Blinken's first stop was Shanghai, and he was welcomed by the director of Shanghai Municipal Foreign Affairs Office. So as you could see in this picture. Now, this guy is only a municipal official, and the Chinese could have easily sent the head of the North American Affairs from the Foreign Ministry to receive Blinken in Shanghai, but they didn't. Now, it's worth mentioning that 2 weeks ago, when the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen visited China, she also didn't go to Beijing directly. She arrived in Guangzhou, and she was personally received by the deputy minister of the Chinese, the deputy minister of the Chinese ministry, of finance ministry, who flew from Beijing to Guangzhou to greet Yellen. So the Chinese flew an official from the central government to greet Yellen, but they didn't send someone from Beijing to greet Blinken. By the way, Yellen got the red carpet in 2023, but not in 2024. But Blinken didn't get the red carpet on either visit. So it's evident that the courtesies extended to Blinken this week when compared with whether compared with Janet Yellen's visit 2 weeks ago or his own visit a year ago or last June, have been downgraded. The courtesies have been downgraded. Now, let's talk about his stay. The Chinese arranged to have Blinken stay at the Fairmont Peace Hotel. Do I have a picture? I think I do. Where's the, yeah, I have a picture. Where's the picture? Here we go. It's a small picture, but you can see. Now, this is an old hotel built by a British Jewish banker, Sir Victor Sassoon, in 1929. It was the Cathay Hotel before the CCP changed it to the Peace Hotel. The Chinese chose this hotel for Blinken, not just because of the name Peace in it, but because of its location and something else that's tied to the location. According to an article by Chinese media NetEase, Blinken's visit to China coincided with the 75th anniversary of the founding of the Chinese Navy. So the Navy of the PLA's Eastern Theater Command arranged for 2 military ships, open day activities on the Shanghai Bond. The Bond is next to the Peace Hotel. The Peace Hotel is like the landmark, one major landmark on the Bond. So the 2 ships were the Zibo missile destroyer and the Peace Ark hospital ship. Now, the article said that from Blinken's room, he could see the missile destroyer from his window, which I have a picture. So this is the missile destroyer from his window. And the Chinese article suggests that this was an implicit warning to the United States not to meddle with China. So I don't know if Blinken or Biden care about these nuances, but the Chinese certainly do. And they're very good at using symbolism to create narratives in their favor. And I'll give you another example to illustrate this. That is when Janet Yellen and Anthony Blinken visited China, they didn't go to Beijing directly. They instead, Yellen landed in Guangzhou first and met with business leaders before heading to Beijing. Blinken visited Shanghai first. He walked on the Bond. Where is he? Here we go. I'll have some pictures. There he is. And then he visited the Yu Garden, which is part of the old town. He had, I think, lunch there with some business leader. There are people watching him. He attended a basketball game. He visited the NYU Shanghai campus. That's his hotel. So it's kind of interesting that these leisurely activities are not necessary for him. His trip and that of Janet Yellen were to meet their counterparts in Beijing and maintain high-level communication between the 2 governments. But why didn't they just go to Beijing directly? Well, this is a Chinese design and probably a Chinese mandate. Now, let me tell you a little bit about history. During the Qing dynasty, the Chinese emperor and his officials in Beijing didn't deal with diplomatic representatives sent by the European countries and the US. The emperor or the empress let local officials deal with the foreign envoys. And this was actually one of the reasons that the Opium Wars erupted, because the Western nations weren't happy with this arrangement and they wanted to have a channel of communication with the central government and then the decision makers in the central government then. It's very similar to the situation now. Like it seems that the West keep emphasizing that we need to have open communication, and then the Chinese rulers just said no. But the Qing emperor avoided that. And even when the foreign envoys were allowed to go to Beijing, the Chinese emperor ordered foreign envoys to follow a certain route before entering the capital city, sort of for a pilgrimage. So this route and the pilgrimage route started in a coastal city. So, at the time it was Canton. So Xi Jinping was doing the same thing uh, to Joe Biden's officials. Since the Biden administration repeatedly requested to meet with the Chinese to keep the dialogue open, it's very similar to the situation before the Opium War. So Xi Jinping sees this as begging, the Americans begging to talk to him. So he responded by ordering foreign envoys to follow the old pilgrim pilgrimage. I can't say this word tonight. Pilgrimage route before meeting him. Um, from America's perspective, Yellen and Blinken should just go to Beijing, talk to whoever they need to talk to, and do their business there. No, the Chinese say you cannot come to Beijing directly to meet with Xi Jinping. You must follow certain protocol. You need to first go to a coastal city like Guangzhou and Shanghai before you come to Beijing to pay tribute to our leader. And the intention is certainly to put down the Americans. I think Joe Biden's officials must know this, because they have so many Chinese scholars on their team. They must have known this, but they probably didn't care. Um, Now let's talk about Blinken's meeting with Wang. Blinken met with Chinese. Blinken met with China's highest-ranking foreign affairs official, Wang Yi, for 5.5 hours. And during the entire time, Wang read from a script. Okay, 5.5 hours. He read from he didn't talk throughout that 5.5. He didn't talk throughout that 5.5 hours, but during the time, he read from the script. Well, the script must have been approved by his boss. Now, not every Chinese cares about these international politics. People in China don't really, they care about their everyday life. They don't really care about a visiting American official and what he said with what he discussed with Wang Yi. However, Blinken's meeting with Wang got people's attention because of something unusual that happened at the meeting. We don't know exactly what has happened, but we know the aftermath. After the meeting, the U.S. Embassy in China published the transcript of Blinken and Wang's opening remarks at the meeting. You've seen this. This is the meeting. This is the two looking, I don't know, kind of not very engaging, right? The picture, the facial expression doesn't show that they're very animated or engaged in this meeting. So that's the meeting. So this is the post that got people's attention. So this is a post by the U.S. Embassy in China. And it's the transcript of their opening remarks. In the first paragraph, it's Wang Yi's speech. There were 6 places, or 7, I don't know, in parentheses that were marked "cannot hear," 听不清 in Chinese. And the post read very funny, and it's like the Sino-US relations experienced "can hear." Is it's like his talk was inundated with these "cannot hear" comments. So it immediately received wide attention. The Chinese, whether those who are pro-US or who are against US, they all reacted. Some say that's exactly where Sino-US relations stand. Uh, it's that the two sides can hear each other. Others say it's impossible that the Americans couldn't hear their foreign minister who was talking. And they say that the Americans intentionally published this to insult the Chinese. Uh, Others assumed that it was a joke, including myself, because I couldn't believe this was real. Then the American embassy in China followed up with a post saying, "Please see the State Department website for the English original. Director Wang's speech was transcribed based on recordings of simultaneous translation." So they were explaining it was real, and so here is the original uh, State Department transcript in English, and the highlighted parts are what it says in Audible. So now we know it's real. So it is, but it's very, very odd, because how could people just can't imagine such a high level meeting, and it's the opening statement, and the Americans just didn't get what Wang Yi was saying. And the Americans actually had the audacity to announce it to the world that they didn't get everything. So what people wonder what has happened. Well, it could be a technical issue, such as the mic was off, or something has happened to the Chinese translator who couldn't do his or her work, or Mr. Wang Yi was talking gibberish and no one could understand him. So the problem is obviously on the Chinese side, since they're the host of the meeting. And what's some people discussed that what seems more bizarre is that one had a script, and the Chinese didn't provide one script to the Americans, right? Even after the meeting, and the Americans didn't even bother to ask, because they certainly missed a good part of his talk. That just shows you how detached the two sides were, right? So and the Americans didn't care about saving the Chinese face and just published the transcript as is. However, today the American State Department's website fixed the transcript, and it no longer has the word inaudible in parentheses. And everything is fixed. This means that the Chinese provided the script to the Americans after it had become the talk of the nation and utterly embarrassed Xi Jinping and Wang Yi and their officials. So I think at the request of the Chinese, the State Department updated their website by fixing those inaudible parts of the transcript. And that just shows you the dynamic of the relations behind the scene. Now let's talk about Xi Jinping's meeting with Blinken. First of all, Blinken wasn't notified of his meeting with Xi Jinping until after his meeting with Wang Yi. The person who announced that Xi Jinping was ready to meet him was China's Minister of Public Security, Wang Xiaohong. Now, this is very odd. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi didn't tell his counterpart that Xi Jinping was going to meet him, but it was the police chief who informed Blinken that his boss would meet the visiting guest. I guess that just shows us that Xi Jinping is relying more and more on police instead of diplomats to handle international affairs, right? Let me play you a video comparing their meetings from 2023 and 2024. I won't say anything. I'll just play the video clip. It's 2 minutes long. Okay, so where's the video? Here's my video. Okay. Okay, so the first one is 2023. Notice how Xi Jinping was pacing back and forth, looking tired and anxious before meeting Blinken. He just asked, when do they leave? And someone answered, tonight.
Good afternoon，主席好，很高兴见到你。
And the translator said, good afternoon, greetings, Mr. President. Very happy to see you. I think the translator was translating for Blinken. Take a look at the flowers. It's lotus flower. This is now, this year. Xi Jinping just asked, where are the reporters? Reporters from both sides, right? He asked or said. Thank you. Okay. So you see, well, it's the meeting, both meetings took place in the same room. It was the Fujian Hall. But there's a big difference. First of all, the lighting is very different, right? Last year the lighting was very bright, and this year somehow, maybe it's the camera, it looks so dark. And also last year you could hear Xi Jinping saying "ni hao" or hello to Blinken. This year he didn't say anything. The handshake was shorter this year. And there's one big difference. I mentioned the flower. Let me show you the picture. So last year, the flower was in the center, was a lotus flower, which symbolizes, peace and harmony. And this year, it's changed to a green called croton, variegated croton, and it's Chinese. It's called 变叶木. And it's a plant known for changing its colors, symbolizing changing situations, unpredictability, and difficulty in being understood or predicted. And I prepared a slide. So in Chinese, 荷花, lotus, means it is 荷花. 荷 means 和, right? Peace or unity or harmony. And then this is called 变叶木. It means unpredictability and changing, or changing situations. So this change of flower in the center is a very clear sign of the Chinese perception of Sino-US relations within a year. It's actually less than a year. It's only 10 months. Okay, so now let's talk about US-Russian relations. I think this is actually very interesting and important. So you've already heard by now Anthony Blinken's, from his press conference in Beijing after the meeting, right at the end of his trip. So it's obvious from the meeting that the Chinese won't withdraw support to Russia. Xi Jinping doesn't want to cut the ties with Russia because this was his strategy from day one. The United States should have stopped Russia from forming an alliance with China, but it's too late now. Um, if the CCP doesn't stop Russia or stops supporting Russia, Putin will lose the war. And if Putin falls, Xi Jinping will be isolated and very lonely. He's already very lonely. We will be lonelier. And his power will be greatly diminished. On the other hand, Putin won't let China get off the wagon. And this is a very important issue. Now, why I said that is when Blinken was in China on the 25th of April, Putin announced that he is paying China a state visit in May. Neither side announced the exact date, but Putin announced that he was going to visit China next month. And he will present a gift to Xi Jinping, which is one of Xi's favorite books. It's an 1833 Russian novel titled, listen to the title, What is to be Done? Yes, the novel is called What is to be Done? It was written by Russian philosopher Nikolai, let me pronounce his last name, Chernyshevsky. It's a love triangle story about a woman who left her husband and went for her lover. But it was one of the most important literature that the Soviet leaders all favor because somebody said that it was kind of it played an important role in formulating or in driving the Russian Revolution. It provided the emotional justification that paved the road for the Russian Revolution. But anyways, so Putin will present this gift to Xi Jinping, which is this novel. And I think it's symbolic in the triangular relations between China, Russia, and the US, because the book is about a triangular love affair, between a woman and two men. And I think somehow by giving this novel, which is one of Xi Jinping's favorite, by giving this novel to Xi Jinping, I think Putin is reminding Xi Jinping of the important role Russia plays in this triangular relations with the United States, right? In the Russia, China, and U.S. relations. And what I say that, but because if you look at it, every time when a U.S. official visits China, Putin felt uneasy. And the timing of his announcement of the state visit to China is just one example, because it happened exactly when Anthony Blinken was in China. And then 2 weeks ago, when Janet Yellen was visiting China, the Russian foreign minister suddenly decided to visit China. He actually came while Yellen was still in China, before Yellen even left China. And the same thing happened last year. Yellen visited China from July 6th to the 9th, maybe the 10th. Did she leave on the 10th of July last year? But for 4 days from July 6th on. And Lavrov, Russian foreign minister, visited China immediately after. He met with Wang Yi on July 13th of 2023. So it was like 3 days after Yellen left. So I think that's what I say. Every time a U.S. official visits China, Putin felt uneasy, and he has to send someone to remind Xi Jinping of their alliance. So I don't think Xi Jinping will pull away from supporting Putin because Putin will not let him. So that brings us the question, what will happen next? Well, Blinken said at his press conference in Beijing that if China doesn't address this problem, we will, right? So what trump cards does the United States have in its hands? Well, first, like Tony Blinken said, in his press conference, the U.S. will impose financial sanctions on a list of over 100 Chinese companies that are secretly, supporting Russia's military industry or doing business with Russia. And the second thing is it will kick some Chinese banks from SWIFT system, right? And Janet Yellen said a few days ago that it's an option that the U.S. has, or it's a tool the U.S. has. Now, I don't think the Biden administration will kick all of Chinese banks from SWIFT at this point, because it will it will have too much of an economic impact on world economy. But it will have a targeted approach by pinpointing some Chinese banks, and this may include um, a large Chinese bank, a state-owned bank. And then three, the U.S. may raise tariffs on Chinese goods and initiate a new trade war with Beijing. Number four, this is lethal. The U.S. has already announced starting investigating and possibly disclosing the assets the top CCP officials, including provincial level officials, hold overseas. So these are the four trump cards the U.S. have. Now, when I set the title for this discussion, for this live stream tonight, I said the party is over. I meant the good time in the U.S.-China relations is over, and the relation will deteriorate quickly from here on. I then realized it could also mean that the Communist Party will be over, or is over. But so to answer the question whether or not the Communist Party will be over as from this point on, I think it depends on what the Biden administration does going forward, or what it will do with the four trump cards that it holds, or that he holds in his hand. If Biden carries out one or two of the above four measures, like I said, impose sanctions on hundreds of Chinese companies that supports Russia. Number two is kick some Chinese banks from the SWIFT system. Number three is start a trade war by raising tariffs. And number four is investigating and disclosing private assets owned by top CCP officials. If Biden only carries out one or two of the above four measures, I do not think that the CCP will be over quickly. But if they carry out all four and immediately, I think there's a very, very high chance that the party may be game over for the CCP. So yeah, so the party is over. Could have two meanings here, but it all depends on what the Biden administration would do from this point on. It also depends on the White House next January and what that president would do with China. All right, so I wrap up my presentation. I hope this is helpful. Let's see if people have questions for me. All right. How is the Sunday, the ice cream cone? People are enjoying their snacks. That's good. All right, let's see. Let me first address all the super chat questions. I changed the lighting, and I feel this is better. The lighting from overhead is too distracting. I hope you like this lighting better. I certainly do. All right. Let me see if there are super chat questions for me. Okay. Did I miss anyone? Oh, here's one from Power Shift. Always great videos, Lei. Many thanks. Well, thank you, Power Shift. All right. From Packer Jib, President Biden is the man. All right, let's hope he does the right thing to help the world. All right, let's see. I think that's all the super chat questions. Okay, let's a vegan T-Rex. Isn't it a contradiction to roll out the red carpet for US business leaders, then put on a show to show his displeasure with Blinken? Why not just pretend to welcome him? Oh no. No, not the CCP leader, because they want to give different treatments to US officials. Um, First is to cause internal division. I mean, it's a very common tactic that the CCP use. They will treat one group very well and another group, I mean, subgroup, and uh, badly. They will give you different treatments. Um, yeah, so it feels more powerful by doing that. Um, being nice isn't in CCP's toolbox, shall we say? I mean, being nice. I think being nice is only the facade. Anyways, let me see other questions. Moonwalker, why do you think Biden has not visited China personally? I think it's obvious. I mean, the relations aren't doing well, and then I mean, it was the COVID, and then I think the relations the world's relations with China has changed so dramatically in the past 2 years. I think it will be too costly for him to visit China politically. So he hasn't, and I don't think he will before November. All right, let's see. VRRV. How long will she play this game? As long as he can. As long as we allow him to. As long as Joe Biden or whoever is in the White House allows him to. They can stop the game right away. But yeah. Crystal clear. Do you think China will be divided into different countries if the Communist Party falls? No, I do not think so. I have answered these questions a couple of times before. I think the Chinese culture will uh, bond people together, and and China is not after decades of being ruled by the Communist Party. Most Chinese have this mindset that believe that they need to stick together. They don't have the audacity or the confidence to declare independence. They somehow have been brainwashed to believe that when they stick together, it's better for their future. So it's not. I think declare independence, into different states, like the the independent state of Fujian, Shandong. I don't think the Chinese are in for that. Yeah, I do not believe that will happen. Chinese are not ready for that. Galia Slavova. What will happen when Putin fails with Xi's CCP cordial support of them? Are they going to be totally isolated and done? Well, it depends on what the West do to them. I think the West should separate that alliance. I think Putin wasn't interested in. I think Xi Jinping likes Putin better than Putin likes Xi Jinping, but some. I don't think if there's a choice, Putin would want to create an alliance with Xi Jinping or with the CCP. But somehow the West has allowed that alliance to take place, to be formed, and this is a big mistake. And look at the world now. It's if we could have prevented that from happening, I think the world the crisis we see today would be much smaller or manageable. All right. Um, Douglas Lilyfield. So who's the lover America and Russia is the stay at home neglected wife? I don't know. I mean, I didn't read the novel, but I just um quickly read through the synopsis of the novel, and someone who is familiar with the novel said that it's a love story. I don't know. I guess Russia and I don't know. Maybe Russia is the wife, and then it's being competed between China and the US. I don't know. It could be the other way around. But it's a triangular. Um, all right, let's see. Oh, I have a super chat. Packer Jib, can you not say President Biden? Why? Well, he is the president. Um, is that N say? I know there are people who don't like him. I mean, there are a lot of. I mean, there's so many things that he's not doing right. I mean, look at the border crisis, right? Look at. I mean, he could have done a lot more um, to help the United States. And but I'm trying to be respectful to all the publicly elected officials, regardless of their political affiliation. But I'm gonna be as critical, to anyone if they don't do the right thing. I think there's no need for us to be emotional about that, but we could you know, uh, I think Biden and the Democrat are responsible for the current for the border crisis and some of the other crises that we've seen, on U.S. campus. They I don't know what they're going to do now, facing the upcoming election. Um, all right, Nick Fury. Would it be better if China breaks up into three pieces and allow each state to again independent or remain in some Chinese federation instead of one giant China state? No, I don't think so. I mean, my question is, does the West want to deal with three China or just one? I think dealing with one I mean, is easier than three. I mean, you want to replicate the problems three times? How do you know all three leaders are going to be agreeable to the West and endorse a democratic political system, right? So I don't think the West I don't think having China breaking up into three pieces will benefit the West. You just want to make sure the country has a good leader that generally think for the people. um that's what matters, not necessarily breaking up into three. And then they will have regional conflicts. The three countries will have regional conflicts among themselves. On top of that, the US will create three times more problems, or maybe even four times more problems. Why? I don't think that's a good idea. Voices on Espanol. Stick to talking about China. You obviously haven't been paying attention to how the dysfunctional GOP is blocking any sort of productivity in the US Congress. Okay, I take your advice. But I think right now in the United States, both parties can't, I think they shouldn't be too emotional. When the United States is divided, that really you're really giving it away to the CCP. The CCP's the entire intention is to get Americans fight with each other. So that's why I do not think we should fall into that trap. Yes, we're different. Yes, the policies are different. There are things that the GOPs have done right. There are the things that they have not done right. I mean, it's the same for the Democrat, but no matter what, we should not be, fighting with each other. It's just not worth it. That will give a huge opportunity to the CCP. And why do we want to do that? Somebody said, "You blame the border on the President Biden." Seriously. Okay, I'm not here to talk about the border. Okay. But I see all these Chinese coming in through the borders. You can't the number of Chinese that have come through the border increased from what, thousands, hundreds, a few years ago to now, I don't know how many, tens of thousands. Why doesn't he do something? How do we know that everyone, who crossed the border, every Chinese who crossed the border is really somebody who's fleeing China, for a good reason? Why doesn't he do something? I just don't understand. Can someone explain that? Anyways, I'm not here to discuss that, and I welcome all kinds of opinion. I think, smart, rational people can take different opinions and can listen and accept different opinions and not be upset. Okay, all right. So let's see. Uh, yeah, fighting amongst ourselves is what they want. Exactly. And I'm not falling into that trap. So it's okay that you're critical of me. And I think I respect that. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. And I think smart people are those people who can listen to criticisms, even though they could be nasty criticisms. These are the truly smart and strong people. If you cannot take criticisms, that doesn't make you very strong. So, all right. Okay. I think that's all. Oh, here we go. Thomas Wardrum. You're right. US divisiveness hurts our efforts, but we always have been a nation of differing views. That's also our strength. Yes, you're right. I think a rational discussion of our differences is good, but let's not get emotional. I've seen some people can be emotional. Uh, all right, I think that's all. That's all the questions. Okay. All right. Oh my goodness. Here's all the some Wu Mao has been acting up. All right. Okay, I'll end it here. Okay, so Lei, are you going to do a video about TikTok and the US forcing a sale of it? I already talked about that. I talked about that, I think 2 weeks ago. The CCP has been quiet about this, which is odd. They have not been quiet about this. I mean, take a look at TikTok, the CEO of TikTok. He's mobilizing people to oppose uh, the bill. So they're not quiet about it. Uh, yeah. I talked about it 2 weeks ago. Maybe we can repost that link. All right. Okay, that's all. Okay, Westchester Observers Group. Yes, we need to avoid being divided irrationally. The US border problem is bipartisan problem. I agree. Well, thank you. All right. That's all for tonight. I thank you for joining me. Um, and I'll see you next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Okay, bye-bye.